Good morning, everyone. So I'm sure all of you are doing great. Hmm? It has been more than 1 month, right? That you were in this almost like writing marathon. So you have completed 18 tests so far, and within that, I think five essay tests and five ethics tests also. I think that is one of the best features of this program, I think. So otherwise, voluntarily, I don't think you would have written so many ethics answers as well as essays also. Did you notice the difference between your first essay and the last test you wrote? The first essay test and the fifth essay test. So what was the difference? So you completed on time. Okay, that is good. And then quality. Okay, quality in what sense it has improved? So you are able to find different dimensions. So now you may be understanding what actually is dimension, right? Dimension is not repeating the same idea, but telling the same idea in different dimensions. So you may be figuring it out in your essay. Very good. And then what about quality of your examples? Are you able to are you recycling the same examples in all the essay tests, or are you able to uh, find, prepare examples from different sources and use them in your essay test? So last year, I think I remember telling core batch that the examples which we have used in the beginning, right? So don't ever repeat them in any of the essays. Right. So that should be the attitude that whatever examples you have already used, right, ensure that in the next essay test, those examples are not repeated. So make it kind of, what do you call, goal, or, some kind of challenge, right? Because this is what happens. So you write examples in the first test, and then when you are not able to think deeply or dwell deep into the topic, so you tend to reuse the same examples. So usually the mind works in the way that at a comfort level. So it tries to recall what is very obvious, what comes in the very first instance, right? So that is what it tries to use. So that kind of thinking you need to overcome while writing the essay. So if you make it a habit of not repeating any of these examples, right? So what will happen over a period of time? So you will build a repository of examples because you are compelled to use new examples, right? So when you tell, you are compelled to find new examples, prepare new examples, prepare new ideas also. So you will have a repository of so many examples and ideas. So when the mains exam actually comes, you can pick the best examples, best ideas from all of them, right? So that is the idea behind this particular idea, that you should not repeat the examples. So last I remember telling you, you should go with diverse sources, and they should be I believe now I'm very much convinced that in all of your essays there must be compulsorily a literature dimension, English literature, right? So most of the topics, right? Of course, even if you are writing something on democracy, right? So you can quote something from George Orwell book, English literature, right? But mostly philosophical topics, ensure that there is at least one or two ideas picked from English literature or Hindi literature or Indians writing in English. So when I say literature, it doesn't mean that only Western literature, right? It can be from Kannada, Telugu also. So critically acclaimed works. Some of those regional works might have been translated to English also, right? So recently you might have heard Kuvempu is a like not just famous Kannada author, like he's I always believed that if his works were translated into English, carrying the essence of whatever uh, literary gems he had accommodated in his works, if they were translated as it is, so he would have easily won Nobel Prize for Literature or something, right? So recently one of his works was translated into English, Malegalalli Madhumagalu. So it is a very famous novel by Kuvempu. So it was translated into English. So it is, I think it's very late that, we are doing those kind of works. So earlier we had famous playwright Girish Karnad. Right, Girish Karnad used to write in Kannada, English, and Marathi also. So he used to translate his own Kannada plays into English. So National School of Drama in Delhi. So they used to, enact his plays, and he was also a well-known actor also. Yeah. So there are so many things, right? It can be picked from your own language. It can be picked from the Western. So if there is a combination of something like that, it's very important. The reason, like you might ask, okay, why I am compelled, like I am convinced that you need to use English literature. One, there is obvious reason that I believe these philosophical topics are going to be evaluated by English professors, right? Or maybe philosophy professors, which who definitely appreciate literature. Secondly, they engage the reader, right? Evaluator of your essay is somebody who is well read, right? So they appreciate the thoughts, they appreciate the kind of examples you have picked up to justify your arguments when they match with their own interests, right? When they match with their own tastes. So that is when people appreciate, even in a conversation, right? So there is always certain kind of frequency, right? At an intellectual level, they would like to engage in a conversation. So it is kind of a conversation, you are reading and appreciating. Third, it engages in the sense that, so even if they haven't read, right, they appreciate. So if you have brought something like that, and it suddenly makes us pause and then think about it, right? It may be an idea, it may be a book you are referring to, it may be a life of an author. And also I would recommend you, when you are collecting these ideas, don't just Google a book and pick 4 or 5 ideas, but also try to read the brief life story of the author also, the writer, novelist or writer, very briefly. Right. So I believe understanding the personality behind the works somewhere helps you understand the gravity and the importance, significance, and also the context of, right. So for example, V.S. Naipaul, you have heard, right? V.S. Naipaul. So he won Nobel Prize for Literature. V.S. Naipaul. So his name sounds like Indian, but he was born and brought up in, I think, Trinidad and Tobago. So that, the Caribbean nation. So he has written many books on India. So he traveled across India. There is one famous book, A Wounded Civilization. So very critical look at the Indian society, right? Mostly the negative aspects of the Indian society. A Bend in River, I think that is his famous novel. So he got Nobel Prize mainly because of the novel, I think, A Bend in River, something like that. So you can, why did I mention him? Huh? Yeah. Author, like if you read his life story, right, it is interesting, like why he had a certain kind of a critical, a very critical look at the Indian civilization, right? So his parents, I think they had moved as indentured laborers, I think, long ago during the British time there, and so there is a cultural connect, yet there is kind of disconnect, so that he wants to explore, right? So if you read articles and the criticism, the reviews of the books of such people, and also about them also, so then what happens is that when you try to bring them, it won't look mechanical, right? So there is a you know, soul to it, you know. So when you bring an idea, so you know why you are bringing it. You know that it is important, right? So the context in which you are bringing that idea in your essay will be very organic, very natural. It won't look, you know, people do that, you know, they have memorized certain quotes and, you know, they put them strategically here and there. So they actually look very mechanical. So even the quotes, the people who have given quotes, these quotes are picked from where? Their works. It can be sometimes their novel, it can be, you know, the non-fiction works, it can be their speeches, it can be their articles. It is not that they have just given a quote and, you know, right. So the quote also has a context. Right. So if you see Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's certain quotes, right, I was reading this Annihilation of Caste, that book. So then I had read his quotes separately. So, right. And then when I started reading that book, there were so many of his quotes, right, like here and there, here and there. They were part of a larger idea about annihilation of caste. But in between, such ideas were coming. So they always have certain context, right? And also they flow from another idea. So if there is a quote, so for that quote there is another preceding idea, right? So if you learn in this manner, what happens? There is always this, you know, organic nature to your essay. The flow will be natural, and the linkages, right? The linkages will be natural. So that is why I recommend, whenever you write, whenever come and, you know, write the essay test, so do little bit of research in this direction, English literature especially, and maybe every day you can spend 10-15 minutes for that. This is extremely important. I have told so many times that GS3, how much effort you put, you tell me. So you read economy, right? You read agriculture, you read environment, you read disaster management, you read science and technology, you read security issues, right? So to complete all of these, it takes so many days to prepare comprehensive notes and all. When it comes to essay, right, do you prepare in the same manner? The way you pick up environment, agriculture, there is no conscious effort in preparing for the essay, right? There are no subjects or topics that you specially prepare for the essay, but essay is so rewarding. So people get 145, 150, 140, 135, and in GS3, have you seen anybody scoring 120, 130 in GS3 last 5-6 years? No. As far as I remember, somebody might have scored 105, or it is less than 110 only. That is only 1 or 2 individuals. Most of the topper score is around 90 to 95 in paper 3. So just think about it, right? So day in and out, it applies to GS 1 and 2 also, right? So you are separately preparing GS 1, 2 and 3, putting lots of effort. For example, GS1, the GS1 round is over for you, the GS1 tests as part of the core batch. So you have read so much for the GS1, right? All art and culture, ancient to medieval, ancient to modern art and culture, and then modern Indian history, world history, right? Society. And so within society, again, there are so many topics, and then geography and the resources, so many things you have read. But there was no conscious effort. I am not asking you to give equal effort, at least, 30-40% of the effort that you have put for the GS1. If you had put for the essay, this is highly rewarding paper, the essay paper. So that 40 marks jump, right, or even the 30 mark jump compared to GS1 or 2 or 3 that you can achieve in essay paper is very crucial, right, in getting either interview call or in the rank also. So don't think that by reading little bit of novels and non-fiction or about them here and there, about philosophy and all, you're wasting time. You're not at all wasting time. It has huge implication for your interview also, right? I see that people who are well read, right, doing great in interviews. Basically, your mind is open to lots of new perspectives, lots of new ideas, right? So you have seen the world you cannot see here, right? Through literature and through such articles. So when you start talking about certain topic in the interview, so there is depth in what you are saying, there is thoughtfulness in what you are saying, there is an element of interest in what you are saying, there is also passion in what you are saying. So I think we should not, compartmentalize or de-link this essay preparation as part of the UPSC preparation. So it should not be just I have learned so much from GS 1, 2, 3 and 4, so I am going to use that knowledge in the essay, right? So don't have that attitude. Secondly, psychology, I am still not seeing certain psychology concepts or theories, references to psychology in some of the essays. See, wherever, for example, happiness is an emotion, right? It has philosophical dimension, of course, literature, there is huge poetry, literature and everything. And then there is also psychology, right? Wherever you see such words, so again, I won't ask, like, for example, if the topic is on justice, right? So I won't tell you, like, I won't force you to write something about psychological dimension there. But there are certain human emotions related essay topics, so like courage, right? And then like hope, for example, optimism. So something like that. So for those topics, try to collect certain psychological underlying theory or concepts. So I had like 4 years ago, I had made a video and I had actually taken a class where I had listed around 50 odd cognitive biases, right? Cognitive biases. So cognitive biases are, we are all biased in some way, right? So with respect to our own self growth, our own belief system, our own ideology, the way we look at the world, there are so many biases, the way we take certain decisions, right? So they are unknowingly, knowingly, most of the time unknowingly, they are governed or dictated by certain cognitive biases, right? So if you just Google cognitive biases, so you will get so many of them, right? There are like confirmation bias, there are the echo chamber effect, the usual things you might have heard. Yeah, anchoring bias, very good. Correspondence bias, very good. Then Duncan-Kruger effect. There is something called Duncan-Kruger effect. There is something called groupthink. There is also something called groupthink. So you can use them. And these cognitive biases, certain times you can use in topics related to polity and economy also, right? So under behavioral economic, so there is I think there is a subsection related to cognitive biases, why people make certain choices, right? And similarly, like political, right? When it comes to certain democratic processes and everything, the way people participate, the way people vote, the way people think about power, right? Their idea of power, their understanding of the power, most of them are dictated because of these cognitive biases. So if you can bring at least one or two such, right, references in your essay, it is always about contextualization. It's always about your ability to link an ordinary topic with, right, so many other perspectives, right? So that becomes interesting for a reader. And it also application in ethics paper also. In ethics, we have certain psychology topics also, right? In ethics syllabus, do we have or not? We have, right? So as part of that also, the attitude part, right? So I think within attitude, you can read these biases. So either in section A questions or in the case studies, right? So if some people are prejudiced, if some people have taken certain wrong decisions, so you can actually link to some of these biases, right? One of the points could be related to psychology as well. So learn them. Cognitive biases, so the important one maybe around 15 to 20. So learn about them and see their application in various aspects of the life, right? And the third one, of course, the philosophy, moral philosophy. I keep saying that I think all of you are learning. Political science people use moral philosophy effectively, right? People who have studied PSIR, I have seen them using, they mention name of Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, right? Hobbes, Plato, Socrates, they usually keep coming, right? So Immanuel Kant, right? I haven't seen anyone talking about Machiavelli or even Chanakya, even for some of the essays. So I think reading, there is one wonderful book, The History of Philosophy by Will Durant, right? Will Durant, The History of Philosophy. So it is written for general public. Will Durant, right? History of Philosophy. So I think you can buy that book, and in your free time you can read about. So like for example, happiness, there is Epicurus, there is another philosopher called Schopenhauer, right? So they have like unique uh, perspectives on happiness compared to what we usually see, right? So if you can take up certain ideas from those books, right? So your essay will always stand out. Again, so this will also have value for your ethics answers also, right? So the same question, like what is happiness? What is happiness? Something like this. I think 4 or 5 years ago that question was there in ethics, right? Have you seen that question? There is that question. What does happiness mean to you? Something like that. So compulsorily you have to mention, right? So that part must always be supported or justified, right? Substantiated with the theory. Just because they have asked happiness, you cannot write some random story that, like giving alms or giving certain help to somebody will give you happiness. Like why? Right? Okay, you are giving, but what is happening between giving and your happiness? Right? There is something going on, right? Right. So what is it? So philosopher might have said something, psychology might say something. So the moment you start bringing such kind of, right, justifications, and some people have written that ethical justifications. So I saw that in your ethics case studies, I had said that compulsorily in ethics there must be a section on, at the end of the course of action, ethical justification. The course of action which you have prescribed, why are you prescribing that course of action? So what is the justification, right? So ethical justification. So it can be because of the certain moral philosophy principles. It can be because our constitution says so, right? Or the Supreme Court has interpreted something like this. So most of them will have ethical perspective or moral perspective, right? So try to see that angle, and any course of action, in the end you can sum up in a paragraph saying that it is because they meet certain ethical principles, right? The above course of action, I believe, is justified or something. So this particular part I see missing in most of the case studies. I think that is the reason you end up scoring 7, 8, 9, right? But if ethical justification part is strong, solid, plus the identification or identification of the ethical issues. So I see people struggling there also. Ethical issues, right? So to identify the ethical issue, you should have ethical perspective. You are reading a story, right? And I think that you can develop by reading day-to-day newspapers from the ethical perspective, right? So you pick up a story, like for example, today there is a news that 7 civilians are killed by militants in Jammu Kashmir. So see the ethical issues in the case, right? You don't have to wait for us to prepare a question on that in the examination hall, and then you have to think. Last time I told, do you remember, like whatever you want to think in the examination hall, think before. Think and prepare your mind for that. Keep your mind prepared for whatever you want to think in the examination hall, right? So that way you are going to not only save lots of time, right? In the examination hall, you may allow new ideas also to come in addition to what you have already thought about it, because it stimulates. In the examination hall, you have noticed, right? Because you are in a totally immersive environment, like you are in a totally different zone when you are writing the test. Like there is no distraction, the mind is totally focused on what you are writing. But if you have already thought about it something, I think that helps you further push your thoughts, in the examination, right? So I think that is what you need to do. Read the newspaper from certain ethical perspective. Maybe you can note down certain ethical issues also, right? When you are reading certain stories, just try to, and to improve the quality of those ethical issues. I think the ethics jargon is important, right? Ethics jargon is important. Ethics keywords, right? Uh, so for that, have the most important keywords, the ethics keywords ready with you, and also the clear cut definition of each individual. Now, what is the difference between probity and integrity? I can use integrity also in the governance perspective. See, again, that is what, like, let us say that you are sitting in the interview now. Now, my question was like straightforward. What is the difference between the definitions? So, you are giving the context. It comes in the context of the governance, right? So, what is the difference? What exactly is the difference? Hmm? Okay. So, that is one good difference. So, probability according to how the world sees, whether you are clean handed, non corrupt, honest, or something. So, integrity, you are saying more of self accountability, or being honest within. Yeah. So, there is a famous definition of integrity. What is that? I'm sure you all of you know that. Hmm? Like being honest even when the world is not watching you, or observing you, right? Some people are honest because there are rules, regulations. So that is what being, you know true to one's conscience, the integrity. Like, you are honest no matter where you are alone, or you are being watched or not watched. So probity, as you said, correct, in the governance, basically maintaining the clean hand, the probity. So like, you are not corrupt, right? So you are not yielding to any kind of what do you call, bribes, or what? There is another word. What? LURS, livers. There is another word, like, ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಶೆ ಆಮಿಷ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಆಸೆ ಆಮಿಷಗಳಿಗೆ ಅಂತಂದು. ಸೊ ಸಿಮಿಲರ್ಲಿ, ಸೊ ಬೇಸಿಕಲಿ ಯು ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ yielding ಫಾರ್ ಎನಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟರ್ನಲ್ what whims and fancies. Okay, uh, it's okay, fine. So have a very good set of keywords and the clear cut definition, right? Their meaning, sometimes their meaning can be different from different context also. That also try to know about it. So having these ammunition ready, and then reading good literature, and seeing things from ethical perspective will ensure that in ethics paper also you can actually target 130 plus. So all of this I am saying, emphasizing in this session, because essay and ethics, your target must be above 260 from these two paper itself, right? The 260 plus must be your target from these two papers. So I see that there is not much effort put for ethics also, right? So similar to GS 1, 2, 3, but see, where you don't put the effort, the marks are more, right? So people are scoring, even if they write very mediocre essay, they are scoring 100, 105, right? Very average essay also. So if you put actually effort and then do well, so it can push your marks to 130 plus in each of the paper. So GS 1, my suggestion is that before moving to GS 2, see that if there is a time for you to revise, or if you can spend another day or two, whatever previous year questions if you have left, right, if you can revise whatever answers you have written so far, all the copies, just go through them, right? Go through them and constantly seek improvement. So for next GS2 you are entering a different territory now, right? So here the nature of the questions look more of open-ended, broad, analytical, very familiar in GS2. The way you are searching for facts in GS1, right, to enrich your answer, the same attitude should be there in the GS2 also, right? So don't write just the idea part. You're getting the part, right? So GS2 has that kind of, you know, quality. So you feel like, you'll go on analyzing, you'll write more points. But if you can substantiate each and every point, so all the important case laws, right, the Supreme Court cases, so make a list of them. I think there was a book, and I'm sure like in the internet you will find all the most important cases related to each and every aspect of the paper too, right? So all kind of injustices, all kind of center-state relations, right? All kind of disputes. So whatever Supreme Court has come up with, the most important landmark judgments. So I think prepare a list of them, constantly keep revising them. That's very important. And of course, the Constitution. So Constitution, when you learn from prelims perspective, you tend to forget easily, right? So when you learn from prelims perspective, so you remember certain articles, parts of the Constitution, right? And sometimes you will be able to use them in your answer also. But if in the answer, if they can be used in the right context, very organically, right? So I think, so you'll score very well in GS2 also. So ensure that the articles, right, are learnt from certain context. And of course, you can always link with the most of the Supreme Court judgments also. So notice them, right? Because for example, most of the fundamental rights have various interpretations, right? So right to life itself keeps evolving. The Supreme Court, as and when it comes up with a new situation or new issue, a new crisis, so it keeps evolving. More than changing, it keeps evolving, adding to the old interpretations, it keeps evolving. So that kind of multiple interpretation, wherever certain article has come under, ensure that you comprehensively learn them and show them in your answers. So compulsorily in introduction and conclusion, there must be value addition. So another one thing I don't see is that any reference to any constitutional expert or jurist, right? Like one or two, right? Not many of them. In the entire 20 question booklet, even if you mention like in 2 to 3 answers, right? So where it is relevant. So I think that tells that reflects that you have read these things with certain kind of interest. You know the background, you know the context of them, right? So try to use them. You should never look mechanical, whatever answers you are writing. You should not look like you have memorized certain stuff and then you are merely repeating them in your answer, right? So when you have actually learnt them, when you have understood them, the significance, the context, right, the background, everything of all these things, it again comes naturally in your answers. So that quality, when we see that, right, it shows a personality, right? It shows a personality there. I can visualize a personality who is well read, well educated, sensitive, empathetic, right? Understood the significance, the gravity of the issue. So that actually comes in the answer also. So that is why don't make things mechanical, right? So most of the editorials, most of the editorials related to certain political issues, right? So they write with passion certain times. The argument may be biased or one-sided, rightist, centrist or leftist. So you see that there is always a drive to, passion to make certain argument, to convince the reader. They know that when they are sending a column, when they are writing an article to the newspaper, it is going to reach crores of people, right? So they know that it is basically to educate as well as create an opinion in the masses. So there would have gone lots of research while writing it, right? So ensure that you also read with similar curiosity, similar passion. So then you will be able to bring some of it. So when I was preparing for UPSC, I don't know, like I used to be always, even if I didn't have nothing, I used to be like ambitious. So I used to read editorial, I wanted to write editorial. When I used to read editorial, I never wrote. I can never write, I think. I don't know. So I used to read it and I would think that while reading that, some of you may be doing that, I think, I'm sure. While reading that, I always had this thought process in mind, I want to write similar or better editorial. And I used to send letters to the letters to the editors, and it got published sometimes. And I had actually sent 2 times the articles also. It was in 2007 and 8. Of course, they didn't publish. But after that, I stopped. I didn't send. I started my own blog, and I felt I'm free to write whatever I want. So on the so-called Insights on India was my personal blog. So that actually changes the way you think when you have that kind of attitude when they are writing, right? If you believe and think that you should also write something like that or better than that, and with that kind of thinking in your mind, and if you start reading it, right, it actually changes you. It makes you more ambitious. It makes you more, I think that you will learn better also, because your observation has gone one level up now, right? When you are reading it, you are not merely reading to extract 1 or 2 ideas. You are observing the language. You are observing the way they are trying to convince you, right? The way they are trying to communicate. So these things, right, will ensure that you will evolve your own original style of writing. When you start, maybe it can be essay, it can be answers. I think that is rewarded in the current moment in the UPSC. So every year there comes a fresh talent, right? Brings freshness, new idea. It can be mostly in terms of content, right? So they are actually given very good marks. So ensure that that kind of attitude you develop, right? And I'm sure, no, I'm not sure, but did you write all the tests, all of you? Write all the tests, right? So even when you are not prepared, just come and write. I'm sure those who have written all the tests, even when they have not prepared, you might have noticed, right? The fear is gone, and you feel like you can write something sensible, right? Something with common sense, even when you haven't prepared, right? So that is extremely important. There are always 3-4 questions in the real exam for which you don't know absolutely right answer, right? So I usually discourage you to write anything if you don't know absolutely anything about it. But if you have developed this ability, this kind of ability, right? So trying to synthesize something sensible, something logical, right? Based on your understanding of all other concepts, even if you don't know the concept, right? And what happens is you start trusting it. If you start writing it from now onwards, you will actually trust in the real examination, whether it can be prelims or it can be in the mains. You won't doubt like what you are writing, right? So that needs to be strengthened. So that is why attempt certain questions for which you don't know the answer. Here you can do the experiment, right? Because if you have written absolutely rubbish, anyway we are going to give 0 or something, then you can avoid that in the next test. And if you have written something and if you get certain marks, and if you go back and see that what you had guessed and wrote, if it was actually correct or nearly correct, so I think so that ability is very important in this examination. So try to write each and every test, at least from this perspective. And any other doubts? Any doubts you have? Yeah, 2 more things. Prelims tests, are you giving? All of you, don't miss prelim test, especially CSAT. Paper 1, I am sure everyone is giving. CSAT, don't think that you can start doing it in the month of, even if you are really good with CSAT. If you have the ability of scoring 120, 130 in any kind of paper, there is nothing wrong, just keep giving it. Practice is always important, right? And paper 1, after giving the test, the GS paper of prelims, after giving the test, are you analyzing the paper? Spend significant amount of time. It can be 4 hours, 6 hours, right? So when you spend significant amount of time, you will be able to not only get a new kind of example, new kind of facts, right? Because you are constantly writing answers. Has it happened to you that something you learned as part of the prelims you were able to use in mains answers? Yes or no? Were you able to do that? Right? That's very important. Kind of complementary, right? So you learn something in mains, maybe a fact or something, you can use it in the prelims. You may not be consciously, you know, realizing it, but I think it has importance here. So what you learn as part of the prelims, you will be able to use in the mains. So as you move into the GS too, pick all the polity questions, right? Questions related to social justice or certain IR questions also from prelims. So solve them with a priority. So for example, today or tomorrow, pick up all polity questions. I am sure there may be only just how many? 200, 300 odd questions, right? Entire Indian polity, like last 20 years I'm talking about, assuming that on an average there are like 10 to 15 questions or something, right? So pick those questions and give importance to those concepts and also try to learn those facts. If you see that certain fundamental rights questions in prelims, they have there have been questions with a philosophical basis. They have asked questions the philosophical backing of certain articles, right? So in prelims, so learning such kind of questions definitely will help you use them in mains answers also. So never, you know, create a gap between these two, right? So take them together, prelims practice as well as the mains answer writing practice. It really helps you a lot, and I have seen that majority of the core batch students do not have difficulty in cracking prelims, right? Merely because of writing so many answers. But if you actually complement with this prelims practice, I am sure like there is certainty, there is guarantee of you clearing prelims, right? Because you are going to touch so many different topics. So next, when the science and tech comes, you know, the paper 3 comes. So economy, geography, almost everything that has importance. In paper 1, you have done geography and you have done modern history, art and culture. So here, so in paper 2, of course, you are going to do polity, social justice and IR. And then in paper 3, the most important, economy, agriculture and environment and S&T, right? Extremely important for prelims. So keep learning. And finally, you know, though it is ending around the last week of January, the core batch. So my suggestion is that you should continue to write answers, even if possible till April also. You are not going to lose anything. It is like not giving importance to essay and giving importance to GS paper. It is something like that. What people do after January, after February, they think that, you know, by focusing only on prelims, they are going to crack the examination. No, there must be continuity, right? This continuity will ensure that you have an upper hand after the prelims, right? For mains examination, which really the most important part in getting you the good rank. So these are all kind of small things which we ignore out of our own biases or, you know, fears, right? Lack of sometimes awareness, not able to prioritize things because all others are doing something similar, right? So be confident, you know, ensure that there is continuity in what you are doing, because these small things add up a lot. And if you continue to write answers even in the month of February, March and April, right, daily it can be like 3 or 4 or 5 answers. So after prelims, I am sure in the entire India, you are far ahead of, you know, all other mains competitors. In the entire India, I am talking about it, because I don't think anyone will be doing that. Very few people, if at all someone is doing, very few. If you do that, so to do that, you must have confidence in prelims, right? So if you start from now itself, the prelims practice, so you will have that confidence, right? Any kind of test, so your scores will become kind of, you know, the 100 or 110 will become average in every test series you solve, right? If this kind of preparation is continued. So wish you all the best, right? So today you have CSAT test and the last test of GS1. One more test is there. Okay, fine. So good. How are you doing in society? Are you able to include facts in the society paper? Acha, you are yet to give. Okay, okay, good. So society is one area in paper 1, right? So where people miss facts, where people don't actually give facts. It can be data, it can be number, it can be names, it can be dates, right? So ensure that the society part, you in addition to giving ideas and concepts, you also validate, substantiate with relevant facts and examples. So I think so that is one reason. Another reason is that many people don't remember historical facts and examples, and they fail to justify in paper one. That is why the marks have come down, right? So some kind of specificity is there. So if you compare to GS1 and GS3 facts, you give more importance to GS2 facts. Like you love to remember constitution articles. Similarly, you don't love to remember something related to art and culture, modern history. No, I may be wrong, but some of you may be giving equal importance. That is what I have noticed, right? So even science and technology, that is also kind of ignored area. So don't ignore anything, right? So you have to remember facts. And the last 2 years, the way they experimented with prelims. So I coined a phrase, certainty of knowledge. So only one pair, two pair. There was no scope for guessing or elimination, right? You had to know the exact answer. So I think facts are important, and I think this is the opportunity for you to learn and remember them, right? So all the best. Thank you. And also, not everyone is coming and showing essays. I see only 4 or 5 people regularly coming. So you can come and show, right? You don't have to wait for writing the best essay and then coming and show. Whatever you have been writing, whenever I am there, you can come and show. Okay. Thank you. All the best.